The galaxy had catalogued humanity as a curiosity, not a threat, not a peer, a curiosity. In the annals of the Concordance Archive, Species Index 47 Theta Homo sapiens was filed under emergent predatory mammals, moderate intelligence, high adaptability, a footnote species, observed, sampled, monitored, never consulted. The Concordance had seen civilizations rise screaming into the stars and burn themselves out just as loudly. They had seen hive minds collapse when one queen died, machine intellects freeze under paradox, warrior cultures drown in their own bloodlust. Humanity, by contrast, was quiet, methodical, slow. Too slow to be dangerous. That was the conclusion drawn by the Velathi Ethological Council when the first human exploration vessels were detected slipping between stars without emitting standard subspace signatures. The technology intrigued them. The behavior reassured them. Humans avoided contact. Humans retreated from contested systems. Humans abandoned colonies rather than fight for them. Prey behavior, the Velathi said. So they watched. For decades, humanity expanded inward instead of outward, fortifying systems rather than claiming them. They mapped gravitational anomalies. They mined dead stars. They built things far from trade routes, far from scrutiny. Their transmissions were encrypted beyond standard galactic linguistics, layered in redundancies that suggested paranoia rather than ambition. The Concordance mistook restraint for fear. The Velathi mistook silence for ignorance. And when the first human research ship was taken, no one protested. It happened at the edge of the Narrath Drift, where iron storms distorted long-range sensors and even ancient species avoided lingering. A lone human vessel, designation later translated as Prospector 12, was surrounded by Velathi containment craft. No weapons fired, no warnings given. The humans did not resist. That fact would be cited again and again in later hearings, always with a note of smug satisfaction. The Velathi boarding teams found the humans physically unimpressive, bipedal, soft-skinned, no claws, no fangs worth mentioning. Their eyes, however, unsettled the researchers, forward-facing, focused, too aware. The humans complied with containment protocols. They submitted to scans, blood draws, neural mapping. They asked questions, many questions, but never demanded answers. They observed their captors with unnerving intensity. The Velathi classified them as high-curiosity social hunters. Fascinating specimens. Within a cycle, more human vessels were quietly intercepted. Freighters, survey ships, deep-range scouts, always alone, always isolated, always taken without a ripple through the galactic communications lattice. By the time the first concerns were raised, the Velathi had already established containment habitat Theta Prime, a ringworld laboratory dedicated entirely to human study. The specimens were housed in environments designed to simulate their natural habitats. Gravity carefully calibrated, atmospheric composition matched perfectly, nutrient paste flavored according to early cultural analysis, salty, savory, comforting. The Velathi were thorough. They studied human muscle fiber density and discovered unexpected endurance. They studied neural plasticity and found adaptability bordering on alarming. They ran stress tests, simulated predator encounters, resource scarcity, social isolation. Humans endured. They adapted. They watched back. Dr. Selakvar, lead xenopsychologist, was the first to note the anomaly. Specimens exhibit elevated stress responses, he reported to the council, mandibles clicking thoughtfully. Yet cortisol analogs stabilize faster than projected. Emotional spikes do not impair decision-making long-term. The council dismissed it. Predators evolve resilience, one counselor replied. That does not make them equals. Selakvar hesitated before continuing. They are aware they are being studied. A pause followed. That is expected, the council said. Self-awareness is common in emergent intelligences. No, Selakvar said carefully. They are aware of us, our methods, our blind spots. That earned him a warning citation. Over time, the humans began changing their behavior. They stopped asking questions. They stopped reacting to stress stimuli. They began conserving energy. Hours of stillness, minimal movement, long periods of silence punctuated by brief, intense social exchanges among themselves. They began organizing without any apparent hierarchical markers. No alpha, no submission cues. Just consensus. The Velathi increased stimulus intensity. They simulated catastrophic failures, habitat breaches, sudden gravity shifts. They separated human social units, then reunited them after prolonged isolation. The humans grieved. The humans adapted. The humans remembered. What the Velathi did not understand, what their models could not predict, was that humanity's greatest evolutionary trait was not strength or intelligence. It was pattern recognition under threat. Every experiment taught the humans something. About Velathi psychology. About containment limitations. About response times. About arrogance. The first death occurred during cycle 19. A human-designated subject, H117, collapsed during a metabolic endurance trial. Internal hemorrhaging, organ failure. The Velathi logged it as acceptable loss. The humans did not react violently. They went silent. Every human in Theta Prime stopped speaking for exactly 18 hours. No protests, no aggression, no emotional displays. Then one of them, a female midlife by human standards, looked directly into the observation lens and spoke a single sentence in perfectly reconstructed Velathi trade cant. You should have stopped. The chamber went cold. Security increased. Neural dampeners were recalibrated. Containment fields were reinforced. Too late. Across the ring world, human heart rates synchronized. Breathing patterns aligned. The Velathi noticed the anomaly but misinterpreted it as a stress-induced herd response. They did not recognize coordination. They did not recognize preparation. Beyond Theta Prime, far beyond Velasi sensor reach, something shifted. Human space went quiet. No distress calls. No missing ship reports. No diplomatic protests. Trade continued, borders held, exploration vessels rerouted calmly around Velathi space. The galaxy relaxed. The Concordance archived the human question as resolved. Then, on the outer edge of Velathi territory, an automated listening post detected something impossible. A mass shadow. Not a fleet. Not a station. A formation so large it distorted local spacetime, appearing, disappearing, reappearing closer with each impossible measurement. No weapons powered. No transmissions broadcast. Just silent arrival. Within Theta Prime, alarms began to sound for the first time since its construction. Human subjects stood as one. They did not cheer. They did not rush the barriers. They simply turned their eyes upward, toward the stars they could not see, and waited. Dr. Selakvar felt something he had never logged before. Fear. Because for the first time, the humans were no longer behaving like specimens. They were behaving like soldiers awaiting extraction. And something vast was coming to claim them. The Velasi defense net detected the anomaly too late to understand it and too early to ignore it. At first, the instruments disagreed with one another. Gravitic sensors screamed mass overload. Optical arrays saw nothing but stars. Subspace listeners caught echoes that shouldn't exist, ripples without a source, like the wake of a ship that had already passed before it arrived. The anomaly did not announce itself. It simply was. Admiral Kethrol of the Velasi Stellar Guard stared at the tactical projection hovering above the command dais, his bioluminescent markings pulsing an anxious violet. "Confirm," he ordered. "Is this a singular object or a sensor cascade?" The technician's voice trembled. "Neither, honored Admiral. The readings, they resolve into multiple entities occupying the same vector. Perfect alignment, no thermal bloom, no weapons signatures." "Stealth fleet," Kethrol snapped. "No," the technician said slowly. "Stealth still produces absence. This produces certainty." The projection sharpened. What emerged was not a fleet in any configuration the Concordance recognized. There were no wedges, no swarms, no organic asymmetry, just geometry. Hundreds, no, thousands of elongated forms arranged in concentric arcs, each vessel equidistant from the next, their relative positions locked with machine precision. They were enormous, larger than Velathi capital ships, larger than anything the Velathi had ever built. And every one of them was dark. Not black holes absorbing light, but something deeper, as if the stars themselves dimmed behind them. Kethrol felt his secondary hearts tighten. "Identify origins." The technician swallowed. "Trajectory analysis indicates human space." The bridge went silent. "That is impossible," another officer said. "Human vessels do not operate in formations of that scale. They lack the industrial base." They lack the will, a third corrected. They avoid confrontation. Kethral did not speak. He was watching the data that no one else wanted to see. The formation was not decelerating. It was arriving. On the containment habitat Theta Prime, Dr. Selakvar's world narrowed to the steady hum of reinforced energy fields and the synchronized breathing of hundreds of humans. They stood together now, men, women, varied ages, scars from experiments etched into their skin. They did not look at the observation lenses anymore. They looked inward. Selakvar accessed the neural telemetry feed, mandibles twitching as the data scrolled. It made no sense. Human brain activity showed elevated coherence across individuals, not telepathic. There was no psionic field, no exotic radiation. Yet their neural rhythms were aligning, patterns reinforcing one another through nothing but proximity and shared intent. A collective calm, not resignation. Readiness. Containment control, Selakvar said quietly. I recommend immediate suspension of all invasive testing. The reply was curt. Denid, the Council requires results, especially now. Now is precisely. Denid, the voice repeated. Selakvar closed the channel. He turned his attention back to the humans. One of them met his gaze. A male specimen, tall, graying hair, musculature reduced by confinement but posture unbroken. His eyes, those unsettling forward-facing eyes, held no hatred. Only certainty. Selakvar felt an instinctive urge to step back. The human spoke, voice calm, translated instantly by the lab systems. You should let them go. Selakvar's throat sacs fluttered. That decision is beyond my authority. The human nodded, as if confirming a hypothesis. Then this is beyond your control. In the Velasi High Council chamber, panic arrived dressed as protocol. Emergency delegates flooded the amphitheater, war castes, scientific orders, trade guilds, all demanding answers. The anomaly's projected position hovered at the center of the chamber, growing larger with each update. Open channels, a counselor demanded. Demand identification. No response, came the reply. Jam their communications. No emissions detected to jam. Prepare the defense fleets. That order triggered a ripple of unease. The Velathi Stellar Guard was formidable by concordant standards. Organic hybrid warships grown around crystalline command cores, armed with plasma lances and gravitic shear weapons that had shattered lesser empires. But they were designed for wars where intent announced itself. This thing did not behave like an enemy. It behaved like a consequence. Counselors, said High Speaker Threx Val, his voice resonating through the chamber, we must consider the possibility that this formation is unrelated to the human specimens. A data analyst interrupted, voice sharp. Respectfully, High Speaker, the formation's vector intersects directly with Theta Prime. There is no margin of error. The chamber erupted. They wouldn't dare. They have no standing. They have no right. They have no power. Selakvar's earlier reports resurfaced, flagged, dismissed, buried under layers of academic arrogance. Now they were pulled into the light, scrutinized with sudden urgency. Specimens exhibit advanced social coordination. Specimens demonstrate adaptive resilience beyond projections. Specimens show awareness of observation methods. Each line read differently now. "Prepare a transmission," Threxval ordered at last. "We will assert authority." The transmission was broadcast on all known human linguistic frequencies, layered with concordance legal frameworks and Velathi dominance markers. It was flawless. It was ignored. The anomaly crossed the outer defense perimeter without resistance, not because it destroyed the sensor arrays, but because it rewrote the space around them. Distances folded, angles lost meaning. The human formation slipped through as if the laws the Velathi relied upon were mere suggestions. Kethral watched the tactical display with growing dread. "Power readings," he demanded. "Still minimal," the technician whispered. "Weapons remain dormant." "How can vessels of that mass?" "They are not accelerating," another voice cut in. "They are repositioning spacetime locally. It's not propulsion as we understand it." "Silence." "Admiral," said the sensor chief, "they are waiting." "For what?" "A pause." "For us." On Theta Prime, the first containment failure occurred without warning. One energy barrier flickered, just for a fraction of a second. That was enough. A human hand reached through. Not burned. Not repelled. The field collapsed entirely. Alarms howled. Security drones swarmed, weapons charging, but every drone froze midair, systems overridden by an intrusion that did not originate from within the habitat. It came from above, from orbit, from something vast and patient and precise. The humans did not rush. They walked. They moved toward the exits in organized columns, shielding the weakest among them, eyes scanning angles and corridors they had never been shown, yet somehow knew. Selakvar stared in disbelief. "How do you know?" he asked one of them as they passed. The human glanced back. "You taught us," she said simply. The first human transmission reached the Velathi command network moments later. It was not a threat. It was a statement. A single human figure appeared on every screen across Velathi space. The image was unadorned, no symbols, no banners, no weapons visible, just a person in dark attire standing against a backdrop of stars. "We are humans." "Nitti," the figure said, "we know who you are, we know what you've done." The council chamber erupted, but the voice continued, calm and unyielding. "You classified us as animals, you took our people, you studied us without consent." The image leaned forward slightly. "We allowed it." Shock rippled through every listening post. "You believed our silence was weakness," the human said. "You believed restraint meant fear." A pause. "It did not." Behind the speaker, the darkness shifted. The camera pulled back. What filled the frame was not one fleet. It was an armada beyond counting, layer upon layer of human warships stretching into infinity, their weapons still cold, their formations impossibly precise. "This is the force we built while you watched," the human said softly. "This is what restraint looks like." The transmission cut. In the sudden silence, Admiral Kethral finally understood the truth that had eluded the concordance for centuries. Humanity had never been hiding. They had been waiting. And now the galaxy was about to learn what happened when the specimens broke containment. The first shot was never fired. That, more than anything else, broke the Velasi. Across their territory, defense fleets scrambled into formation, plasma lances charging, gravitic weapons spinning up with familiar, comforting menace. Commanders barked orders. Warcasts invoked ancient battle rites. The Velasi had been conquerors long before humanity had discovered fire. They were ready for war. What they were not ready for was restraint wielded like a weapon. The human armada did not advance. It repositioned. Space itself seemed to ripple as sections of the formation slid laterally without visible thrust, moving with a precision that defied inertia. The Velasi tactical nets recalculated again and again, each solution invalidated before it could stabilize. "They're surrounding us," an officer reported. "No," Admiral Kethral said quietly, "they already have." Velasi fleets found themselves enclosed within overlapping human vectors, kill zones mapped with mathematical perfection. Every escape route intersected with multiple lines of fire. Every defensive posture was rendered irrelevant by angles that should not exist. Still, no weapons fired. The High Council demanded action. "Engage," one counselor screamed, "before they do." Kethral hesitated. His instincts, honed across centuries of genetic memory, screamed that something fundamental had shifted. Predators announced dominance. Empires crushed resistance. But this was a lesson being staged. "Admiral," the council insisted, "that is an order." Kethral closed his eyes. "Fire," he said. Velasi plasma lances ignited in brilliant arcs, streaking toward the nearest human vessels with the destructive fury that had ended worlds. The space between the fleets lit up like a newborn star. And then the plasma vanished. Not deflected, not absorbed, unwritten. The energy simply ceased to exist, its quantum signature collapsing into nothing as if reality itself had rejected it. Velasi weapons systems began to fail in cascading waves. Power cores destabilized, not exploding, but powering down, their energy siphoned away by mechanisms no sensor could isolate. Human ships still did not fire. Instead, a single human vessel drifted forward, separating from the formation. It was smaller than the rest, sleek, angular, its hull marked not by insignia but by scars. It transmitted on open channels. "You fired first," the same human voice said. "That matters." A hologram appeared simultaneously on every Velasi command deck. It showed Theta Prime. Not the pristine containment ring the Velassi remembered, but a live feed. Human evacuees moved through corridors under the protection of invisible force fields projected from orbit. Velassi security forces lay unconscious, unharmed, weapons disabled with surgical precision. Medical drones, human, not Velassi, tended to both species alike. "We are retrieving our people," the human continued. "You will not interfere." "Return our property," a counselor shouted into the channel. The human's expression hardened, not with rage, but with something colder. "They were never your property." The feed shifted. Dr. Selakvar appeared, standing amid the chaos, alive and unrestrained. He looked smaller than he had ever felt. "I warned you," he said to the council, his voice carrying exhaustion and awe in equal measure. "They learned from everything we did." The council tried to cut the feed. They failed. Across Velassi space, systems rebelled, not through violence, but through compliance with a superior logic. Navigation arrays recalibrated to human standards. Communication relays rerouted through human encryption layers. Defense grids powered down under the polite fiction of safety overrides. It was not an invasion. It was a demonstration of absolute control. Human vessels began to build. Massive structures unfolded from their hulls, shipyards assembling themselves in vacuum, fabricators spinning raw matter into finished components. Entire logistics chains materialized where moments before there had been nothing but stars. Kethral watched in horror and understanding. "They could have done this at any time," he whispered. "Yes," came the reply from the human vessel, "but we chose not to." The galactic network lit up as other species finally noticed what the Velassi had ignored for too long. Long-range sensors across the concordance detected human formations awakening from hidden orbits, from deep interstellar voids, from the shadows of dead galaxies. Not converging, already positioned. Humanity had mapped the galaxy not as territory to conquer, but as a system to contain. One by one, Concordance defense fleets stood down, not because they were defeated, but because they realized they never mattered. The Velassi High Council chamber fell into chaos. Some delegates demanded surrender. Others screamed for extermination protocols long outlawed. A few simply sat in stunned silence, staring at the holograms that showed their empire rendered irrelevant without a single casualty. High Speaker Threx Val rose slowly. "You claim moral authority," he said into the channel, voice trembling but defiant. "Yet you cripple our defenses, seize our installations, and dictate terms by force." The human response was immediate. "No," the voice said, "we removed your ability to harm others. There is a difference." A pause followed, long enough to feel deliberate. "You studied us to understand how dangerous we could be," the human continued. "You asked how we would behave under threat, under captivity, under loss." The camera pulled back. The speaker now stood in a vast command chamber, surrounded by officers of every age and background, their faces marked by grief, resolve, and something unbreakable. "This is our answer." The human fleets shifted again. Weapons powered, not firing but revealing themselves. Entire stars dimmed as energy reserves spooled up. Space folded into impossible geometries around weapon apertures that did not resemble cannons so much as decisions made manifest. Kethral felt something ancient within him finally break. "This is extinction-level capability," he whispered. "Yes," the human agreed calmly, "for you, for us, for anyone." The weapons powered down. "We built it," the human said, "so we would never have to use it." The Velathi council chamber was silent. Human evacuation of Theta Prime completed without incident. Every captive accounted for. Every experiment logged, archived, and transmitted across the concordance in brutal, unfiltered detail. The galaxy watched. Species that had quietly benefited from Velathi dominance recoiled. Others, those who had lost colonies, cultures, entire histories to acceptable research losses, felt something dangerously close to hope. Humanity did not claim territory. They did not demand tribute. They issued one directive: return all non-consensual research subjects, the human envoy said, dismantle all containment facilities, submit to oversight. "And if we refuse?" Threxval asked. The human looked directly into the camera. "Then we stop being patient." For the first time in recorded galactic history, an elder empire understood what it meant to be spared. But mercy, Kethral realized, was not forgiveness. It was a warning. As the human armada held position, silent, overwhelming, restrained, new data began flooding the Velathi networks. Not from humans, from elsewhere. Something beyond concordance space had noticed the same thing everyone else had. The galaxy's quietest species had revealed itself. And predators far older than the Velathi were turning their eyes toward human light. Alarms began to sound again, this time across every known border. The human commander's gaze shifted just slightly. "So," they said softly, almost to themselves, "they finally see us." The signal came from beyond the mapped edge of the concordance. Not a fleet signature. Not a weapon discharge. A shadow, a distortion in causality itself, rippling through subspace like a bruise spreading under skin. Every advanced civilization felt it. The ancient ones felt it first. Species that had survived multiple galactic epochs, those who hid behind proxy empires, who fed on younger races through manipulation rather than conquest, recognized the signature immediately. Something powerful had revealed itself. Something disciplined. Something that had not yet decided whether the galaxy was worth saving. Within the human command nexus, the data streamed in across layered hollow fields, threat vectors, probability storms, extragalactic mass estimates so large they bent predictive models into useless spirals. Admiral Jonah Reyes stood at the center of it all, hands clasped behind his back. He did not raise his voice. "They've been watching longer than the Velathi," he said calmly, "longer than anyone." A strategist beside him swallowed. They predate most known civilizations. They don't conquer systems. They harvest instability, let empires rise, then break them when resistance peaks. Predators, Reyes said. Yes, sir. Reyes nodded once. Then they just learned something important. Across human space, fleets that had never been seen, never been catalogued, never been needed, began to move. Not toward the Velasi. Outward. The concordance reeled as human formations repositioned on a scale that dwarfed everything that had come before. Defensive nets realigned. Civilian corridors were quietly evacuated. Entire star systems were wrapped in protective space-time lattices that bent incoming trajectories away like gentle hands guiding falling glass. Humanity was not mobilizing for revenge. They were mobilizing for protection. On Velathi Prime, High Speaker Threxval watched the night sky change. Stars dimmed, not from destruction, but from obscuration as human constructs unfolded between worlds. For the first time in Velathi history, their planet sat beneath another species' shield. You're defending us, Selakvar said quietly beside him. Threxval did not look away from the sky. Yes, he replied hoarsely, from something we helped awaken. The human transmission came not as an order, but as an explanation. We did not reveal ourselves to rule, Admiral Reyes said, his image projected across every listening world. We revealed ourselves because hiding no longer protected anyone. The extragalactic entities made their move soon after. Space tore open along half a dozen vectors, not with violence but with inevitability, as if reality itself had agreed to step aside. Shapes emerged that defied taxonomy, vast, layered intelligences distributed across light years of mass. Their presence felt more than seen. Where they passed, lesser species, technology failed, minds faltered, probability collapsed into despair. They spoke not in words, but in pressure. Yield your chaos. Submit your futures. Be consumed without pain. Several concordance fleets broke instantly. Crews screamed as neural feedback tore through command structures never designed to resist such influence. Human ships held, not through superior shielding, through preparation. Human minds did not fracture. They locked together. Across fleets, across systems, across billions of individuals who had never met, humanity engaged the oldest defense they had ever evolved. Shared burden. Where one mind strained, another supported it. Where fear surged, memory answered. Loss, grief, history, humanity had always carried these together. The predators recoiled. They had fed on isolated civilizations. They had never faced a species that had weaponized unity without surrendering individuality. Human countermeasures unfolded, not as brute force, but as containment. Space-time anchors locked the entities, expansion vectors. Causality snares bound their distributed consciousnesses into localized regions. Still no weapons fired. The predators lashed out. The stars went dark. Human ships were lost, dozens, then hundreds, absorbed into impossible geometries, erased without explosion. Admiral Reyes watched every loss. He did not flinch. "Hold," he said. When the human weapons finally activated, they did not destroy. They ended possibilities. Entire timelines of movement collapsed. The predators found their futures narrowing, choices vanishing, escape routes turning into dead ends they could not perceive until they reached them. For the first time in their existence, the ancient entities experienced something new. Limitation. "You could annihilate us," their pressure thought echoed, strained and uncertain. "Yes," Reyes replied. "Why do you not?" The human commander was silent for a long moment. "Because we know where that road leads." Humanity had walked it before, internally, endlessly, in stories, in wars, in self-inflicted extinctions narrowly avoided. They had learned the cost of unchecked dominance long before the stars ever noticed them. "You will withdraw," Reyes said. "You will not return. You will leave this galaxy intact. And if we refuse?" The human fleets shifted. "Not threatening. Final. Then there will be nothing left of you to learn from." The predators withdrew. Space stitched itself closed behind them, scars fading slowly, like wounds that would never fully heal, but would never reopen. The galaxy exhaled. In the aftermath, humanity did something no one expected. They returned power. Velathi systems were restored, minus the mechanisms of exploitation. Concordance, oversight councils were rebuilt with human observers who spoke rarely and listened deeply. Containment facilities across known space were dismantled, their research archives preserved as warnings rather than trophies. Humanity did not join the concordance. They stood beside it. "We will not rule you," Reyes said in the final address. "We will not protect you from yourselves." A pause. "But we will never allow the galaxy to forget that curiosity without consent is cruelty, and that restraint is not weakness." The human fleets dispersed, not vanishing, but becoming background constants, quiet guardians woven into the structure of space itself. On Theta Prime's shattered remains, Selakvar stood alone, gazing at the stars. He finally understood the error that had doomed his people's arrogance. They had studied humanity as animals. They had never realized the cage was theirs, and that the moment it broke, humanity had chosen not domination, but responsibility. In the ages that followed, new civilizations would rise hearing the same story told in hushed reverence. That the most dangerous species in the galaxy was not the one that conquered worlds, but the one that could have.